Yeah.
And good afternoon to those of you on YouTube. We will be starting the stream here in a moment, so please bear with us as your host gets things going. And now that everything is online and running, hello everyone, and thank you for being a part of the 2021 Virtual Christmas Summit sponsored by Boscoyo Studio. All of the presentations in this room are specifically sponsored by Build a Light Show. Our next presentation is Light-O-Rama Superstar Preview Building for Superstar Props by Jim Walls. During the presentation, please do not unmute yourself or start your video. You are welcome to use the chat to ask relevant questions about the presentation, since other attendees or hosts may be able to answer your question. But please save questions directed at the presenter for the end of the session during the Q&A. At that point, you will be allowed to unmute yourself and ask questions or put them in the chat. Thank you all for attending, and I will turn things over to Jim Walls. Take it away, sir.
Good morning, all. My name is Jim Walls, and hopefully we'll get something useful out of this. Hello. Earth to computer. Why are you? There we go. Okay. Computer is being uncooperative. Actually, I think it was just the focus of who was there. Okay, let's see here. We're going to talk about preview building for Superstar props. And now most of you have some idea how to, I need to do something. I need to put this out of the way. There we go. Had something blocking what I was doing. Okay, I will be talking about building previews in Lore S5 to make things work well in Superstar. And although most of you should at least have the basics of building an S5 preview, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on building the individual elements or individual props for a preview. We'll be showing mostly how to group and how that affects Superstar. And I'm going to be talking about some of the special things you can do. Custom grouping is going to be the important one. First, a little bit about me. My name is Jim Walls. I am known as K6CCC on most of the lighting forums, and yes, that is my amateur radio call sign. Besides computerized lighting, I enjoy amateur radio, target shooting, and flying. Although finances have dictated that I stop flying, it's an expensive hobby. You think lighting is expensive? You ain't seen nothing yet. Now I only fly as a passenger, and I have a DJI mini drone that I do enjoy flying. And the picture in here was taken from the drone while I was flying it. Okay, we were asked to tell something that most people would not know. So for me, that is because of my job. I get to fly in police helicopters from time to time. I can actually do it pretty regularly if I want to. That's, let's just say, a very different kind of flying. I am a bit unusual when it comes to computerized lighting in that I did not start this to do a major holiday show. I started for my landscape lighting. Excuse me. Originally about 35 channels comprising a few 120 volt AC lights, 9 channels of dumb RGB, and the rest were simple 12 volt DC lighting, mostly rope lighting and some Malibu lights for those that remember those. Over the years, the landscape lighting has evolved and grown and is now about 90 channels most of the time and an additional 564 channels for most of the minor holidays. Almost all of the landscape lighting is now RGB, some dumb and mostly smart. In the fall of 2012, I built a 12 string by 50 pixel flat pixel tree. Knowing that I did not have time to sequence to music, I just simply ran it as an animation show on it. After I ran that for Christmas of 2012 and 2013, I decided to convert to a music synchronized show. Yes, I started early in the year, so I would actually have time. I added 6 RGB arches, a couple of hundred pixels on my eaves, and a few traditional strings along a wall. Every year after that, there have been changes or additions. For 2021, the current expectation is there will be a little over 66,000 channels in use. So yes, it's grown. And unlike some people that sequence separate props as separate superstar files, for example, they'll sequence just the pixel tree and then they'll sequence, some other things and so on. I have always sequenced the entirety of each song as one superstar file. And now in S5, that means one insert superstar effects. There are advantages in which we're going to get into doing that. There's also probably a few disadvantages. First, let's take a little bit of a look at my superstar sequencing grid as it looked like in S4, because that's what I needed to duplicate in S5. So that's what my superstar grid looked like in S4. Now, if you remember, you could take a visualization file and create a custom layout so that the things didn't stack up on top of each other. This gave the advantage that as things changed over the years, you did not have to worry about your sequence getting messed up because of some prop moving around on the grid, because that will screw things up for you. This also allows spacing things out so they're easier to see. My 2021 superstar grid in S5, you'll notice will looks similar, not quite the same. There's a few changes. In the case of S5, all these changes are done in the preview editor. And we're going to use the custom layout groups. This is where we'll be spending most of our time today, or a good part of it anyway. You will see that it is very similar to my S4 grid layout. This was important because it meant that most of my S4 sequencing could be moved to S5 with little or no modification. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of what's there just so we know what we're talking about. We start down at the bottom is my 26 string by 100 pixel tree. That is one of the things that's a little different because it was 24 strings until 2018. 2018, I rebuilt it as a 26 string tree because I have several sequences that include a vertically hanging US flag, and 13 stripes just works better on 26 strings than it does on 24. And that's really was the sole reason I rebuilt it. Above that is my pixel star. Now that changed radically because of the way that a nested star prop in S5 imports into Superstar. That meant I had to change every single bit of my star sequencing, but in the long run, it will make it easier for me to deal with. I've got 6 Holiday Coro candy canes that actually this year will be in the show. They've been sequenced for several. I haven't still built them, but I'm intending to actually get them out in the show this year. I have a simple string of strings that a simple string of pixels that largely blocks people from wandering into the yard. It's just 50 strings hanging on some stakes, no big deal. Most of the time they're static. Occasionally the show actually does something with them. Next up is the peak and of my roof. I have pixels along up one side, across the top, and down the other side. And for the top, there are 2 rows of pixels a couple inches apart in order to create a hop effect. That's why you see 2 rows there in the middle. Then we have 6 arches in a row that have 50 pixels each. These are arranged in what is called a vertical stack. We'll get to that a little bit later. Next up, this is the same 6 arches. They are, however, arranged as horizontal stack. Basically, what you've got is the top row of that is the left 3 arches, and the bottom row is the right 3 arches. This is a change that Brian did a month or 2 ago at my request, and it works pretty well. It actually works fine, but there's a couple of minor display issues that still need to be worked out, but it functions correctly. So thank you, Brian. He spent a huge amount of time to make this work right. Basically, if you think about it, there are 3 major things we do with arches. All the arches doing the same thing at the same time or slightly delayed from each other, which works very well on a vertical stack. Some variety of a sweep across all 6 arches, which works very well using VisFX morphs, and some sort of a sweep from the center of the row out or from the out ends out towards the in towards the center. This is where that second group works very well. There are, of course, a bunch of variations on all of this. Okay, my house has an upper and lower set of eaves. No, it's not a two-story house. You'll see that a little bit later. On each set of eaves, I have 2 rows of pixels so that, like the roof line, I can make the lights appear to hop. And there's a concrete and brick planter along the sidewalk, and I have RGB smart strip on both edges of the planter, illuminating the plants. At the very top, I have what I refer to as my minor props, starting with the porch steps. I have 3 steps, and they each have RGB dumb strip on the underside of the step, lighting up the step below. And then I've got 3 tree rings that each have RGB strip along the inside of the tree ring, and there's also a RGB floodlight that points up into the leaves of the tree. Although usually the strip and the flood will be lit the same for any given tree ring, that is not always the case. Therefore, each tree ring has 2 RGB channel sets. And then I've got 17 rose bushes along a wall. In front of each rose strip is about 30 inches of RGB smart strip that illuminates the rose bush and the white stucco wall behind the roses. The 30 inches of strip is treated as a single pixel in the sequence. That's done in the pixel controller. And there's a picture that's taken. You can see the roses along the right side against the white wall, and the planter not completed in the front when I took the picture several years ago. And you can see a couple of the tree rings, although when that picture was taken, the floodlights were not there. And this picture was taken on Valentine's Day, hence the reason why it's red, white, and pink. Last up, we have a couple of brick columns that have a RGB light on top, and the address sign is also RGB. There's those two columns. By the way, I built those, and they have a big space inside of them. And there's controllers, power supplies, my FM transmitter, a network switch, a Wi-Fi access point, a whole bunch of assorted stuff inside that column. And then kind of a top view of the yard. I have a very odd shaped yard. I'm on the outside corner of about 110-degree bend in the street, so it makes things kind of weird on how I have to deal with stuff. But you can see some of the roses along the wall there. And when I do Christmas, the pixel tree kind of sits up in the corner, right up in here, pointed towards the street. Hopefully you can see that reasonably well enough. And the arch is running in a line right along here in front of the roses. So for the most part, during sequencing, I don't normally use the roses and the arches at the same time because they kind of would look weird running at the same time. And that perimeter string runs right along the wall here, and then you got the planter provides a natural barrier there, so it pretty well keeps people from wandering around at the yard. And well, eventually, when this project is done, there will be a walkway coming up here between here, but I haven't finished it, and I'm being very low inspired on doing more concrete work. I'm getting too old for that. Okay, and this is what it looks like in my S5 preview. Now, you're going to say, wait a minute, there's a couple things you didn't mention, and I didn't. The first thing is that the 2 singing faces, which are sequenced by my friend J.R. Dibble, who sends them to me as a sequence editor file, so there's no point in me putting them into Superstar. It wouldn't accomplish anything. These are 3 downlights in the bay window that, for all practical purposes, are not used for Christmas, so they're not in the Superstar sequence. The spotlights for the flagpole, and there's a security light, and my front door porch light are just on. They normally don't get done anything in sequencing other than turned on, but they are all controlled by Light-O-Rama. And then the last is these 2 big blocks up here, which is my P10 and my P5 matrix panel. And I don't sequence those in Superstar because until recently I had a 12,000 channel Superstar license, and those 2 panels are 18,000 and 36,000 channels respectively. And for what I'm using them for, which is my Tune 2 sign, it didn't really matter. They're just text. I can do that as a motion effects, and it works just fine. That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, well, let's see if we can make this go back. I'm not sure I know how to do that. We'll, can I make that go back to there? I guess maybe not. Okay, heck with it. Okay, well, fine. That wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to do a different screen share when I got to that, but we'll fix that. Anyway, that was obviously next we're going to be doing a bunch of screen sharing. So instead of this, we do a different screen share and share a different screen. We want that screen. No, I said yes, there, that screen. And now we come up here to sequencer. Hey, there we go. That's what it's supposed to do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off my picture so that I'm not covering up what I'm doing. So hopefully not as much, and I'm not distracting myself. And okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of things. First of all, I've got this test sequence that I brought up, and it's strictly for this, and we're going to talk a little bit about it, and we're also going to look at one of my real sequences and look at one or two things there. So first of all, I've got this sequence. I'm going to start off going into the preview editor. I actually built the preview so we didn't have to spend quite so much time at it, but I'm going to just kind of really quickly walk through the three props here. We've got a pixel star on top of a tree. Whoopie-doo, no big deal. It's a nested star. It's got 3 rings, and this was done as DMX with a separate universe for each string, which is one of the options that you have. It's called pixel star. No big deal there. We've got a pixel tree underneath it, which was done as DMX as well. It's 16 strings. This time I compressed the groups. You can see that you can do that. It takes up far less channels than if you do it that way. And the last is a couple of arches, and they are done as a LOR network. 50 pixels, no big deal. Pretty straightforward. Okay, we're going to cancel that. Now, what happens if we try and do something with this in Superstar? We're going to start with the pixel tree, for example, and we're going to create a little segment here, and we're going to do a Shift S because I use keyboard shortcuts most of the time. Superstar comes up. We can come in here and we can create a prop, and we're going to create a simple morph, and it's going to do something like this. We add it, and we've got this exciting morph, and it's going to go from the top of the tree to the bottom of the tree. And if we play it, it looks like I like your comment, Drew. Or Don, sorry. I don't know where Drew came from. So there it goes. Now I realize that it doesn't quite look as nice on Zoom, so I'm going to slow this down and play it, and it comes back, and maybe it's my laptop that's not showing it. It really does come out looking what it's supposed to look like here on my computer. Okay, not very exciting, but we created it. Now we're going to come and exit that. We're going to save it. And by the way, I created this little 10-second sequence. It's very small, so we can get in and out of this very quickly because we don't want to be spending 3 minutes waiting for the sequence to load on a large export, which yes, it can do. Now, the problem with that is we're going to want to do the same. Let's say we want to do the same effect on the star. So we're going to come in here again, and we open it up, and we have to start the sequence all over again, or not the sequence, but the effect. And so we're going to take there, and we're going to take the star going out to here. This would be a very unexciting picture on a star, but hey, it'll work. And we're doing the same morph. We're going to do the same colors, and we add that and go play it. Oh, by the way, Brian, here's a thought process. Can you make the setup window go away when you push play so that you don't have to remember to drag it out of the way all the time? There we go. There's that exciting morph. We're going to exit that and save it. And of course, the two aren't very well time lined up, so I wasn't really trying to do that. But if we come and play the whole thing in here, they'll get both morphs. Now here's where groups start coming in handy. I'm actually going to delete these. So I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to delete this one. And we're going to go into the preview editor, and we're going to make a group. And this is where the groups will start coming in handy. So I am going to add a group, and I am going to create a group, or a prop group from existing things, and I'm going to create for the moment, a pixel tree and a pixel star. And for the moment, we're going to say no arrangement. And it says order them in the order you want them to appear on the grid. Okay, that's going to be fine. So we're going to call this tree and star. Okay. And we're going to save that preview. And now we have a tree and star group. And it's got 2 effects. And, oh, I didn't tell it to create a motion effects row. So we're going to add one. Yeah. Oh, that's why it didn't, because I saved it as none and it doesn't like doing that with none. So we're going to edit that preview again. Sorry about that. That's one I don't do very often, so I forgot about it. Okay, so we're going to change this to a vertical stack. And it says we want the items ordered from bottom to top. Well, that's not really the order, so we're going to move that and make that the tree and then the star on top. Okay, now it should work. Okay, now we have tree and star, and we're going to add a motion effects row, which it would have done if I'd told it to do that. And we say, okay, fine. Now we're going to take that motion effects row, and we're going to same thing. We're going to go back in and we're going to create that exciting morph. Now here's what you end up with. The tree is down here on the bottom, and the star is up on top because we told this is a vertical stack. So it's going to stack them vertically. It can look a little confusing sometimes, especially if you have one thing that's really long compared to another. But here's where we can have this advantage. We're going to go into morph, and we're going to go into a visual effects morph, and or vis effects, if I check the box right, there we go. And now it shows up here, and we're going to take go down here at the bottom, and we're going to come up here at the top, and I'm not doing a very good job of making that straight, but it doesn't matter. And we're going to do the same colors we did before. And there's my morph, and we add it, and now we play it, and it worked a lot better on my screen than I see on the laptop. Okay, so that gives the big advantage that now you can group a couple things together. But they look a little odd, but it works. Okay, now we're going to add that, and we're going to go ahead and save that for the moment. And if we go in here to S5, it will come up and actually display the group, and it'll actually play. Okay, so now let's do this and change it one more. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't mention I was going to, you notice on each of these, they came up with a motion effect row, but nothing else. If we really want to be able to see channel level, because people don't forget about this one, is click on there, and now you've got Arch 1 has the motion effects row, and it has the channels, and there's all the individual RGB channels, and if you click the plus, there's the individual colors. So you can break all those out if you want to. Most of the time I don't for most of that, so I'm going to remove the channel level programming. It's going to warn you that that's going to remove any sequencing. Are you sure you wanted to do it? So be warned if you did some manual individual channel programming that way. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into this preview, and we're going to edit yet again, and we're going to edit this group, and we're going to add the 4 arches. And that's probably not going to work very well. So we're going to make something else, and I'll tell you why. Because now you would get each individual arch. We're going to leave this as yeah, I can talk. Boy, I'm doing well at talking this morning. Okay, so now we have this group that I didn't change the name, but it really has more stuff. We're going to go back into that same insert superstar effect. And now you've got, there's the 6 arches stacked on top. Now it's a little hard to keep track of where things are. I mean, there is a little bit of a dividing line there, but it's really kind of awkward. So this is where we're going to get into custom groups where you can do things like that. So we can exit out of there. There's no point saving anything. No, I don't want to. So we're going to go back into the preview editor yet again. We're going to be in and out of this many, many times today. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to change this. First of all, I'm going to change the and arches, just so I keep track of what's there. And we're going to change this to a custom group. Now you notice that the order doesn't matter, and it grays it out, and it added these top and left. And you say, what the heck is that? And for the moment, I'm actually going to take the arches out of it. And we'll see why here in a minute. Now, one of the other things I did not mention is this orientation allows you to rotate something on the screen. And for the moment, I'm going to rotate the pixel tree 90 degrees to the left. You'll see why. And by the way, in my normal sequences, that is how I do that. Okay, so we saved that. We saved it again. And we're going to come back in for the numerous time. We're going to go back into Superstar. We have just the tree and the arches, and then the star. But if you're looking up here at the grid, it said, wait a minute, where's the star? And the answer is we didn't change where it goes on the grid. So they're both there. They're sitting on top of each other. So if I go in here to a scene and I grab some pixels, you'll notice I'm grabbing both the tree and the star. Probably not what you wanted to do, but I wanted to demonstrate the error. So we're going to exit that. And we're going to go back in for yet again and edit the preview. And we're going to take that group, and this is where this comes in handy. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit about what these are doing. These are telling where on the grid to start that particular prop. And it does it from the upper left-hand corner. 0, 0 means it's in the upper left-hand corner. So we want the star to be up in the upper left-hand corner. We want the tree to be down a little bit. Now the star, in this case, is the three-ring star. So it's using the top 3. We want a gap because it makes it easier to keep things apart. So we're going to give this thing down 4 rows. Now, get my fat fingers out of the way. 4 rows. There we go. Now, we save that yet again. We save it again. And we come back here into Superstar. And all of a sudden we have... Did I not save something? It appears I didn't save what I intended to save, or, oh, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't save what I intended. Me? What did I do? Okay, we're going to exit without saving. What did I do? Oh, no, I think it's, okay, let's try this again. Always fun when you miss something, what you're trying to do, and when you're trying to show something. That's not what I wanted to do. You're getting ahead of yourself, Jim. We're going to edit that preview again. See what I messed up. Yeah. See what I messed up here. If that's the worst thing I do today, I'm probably not doing too bad. Pixels. Oh, I moved the wrong one. That's what I did. Well, that'll do it. Okay, so we changed that one to 4. And we changed that one back to 0. I said 0. There we go. Pixel star. Okay. Like I said, if that's the worst thing that I do, I'm probably doing all right. Okay, so now we come back in here again. Let's see if this looks a little bit better. Hey, now it looks a little bit better. You got the star up here on top, a 1-row gap because it makes it easier to keep things apart, and then you got the pixel tree down here. And you notice that it is rotated to the left, so the top of the tree is at the left. And by the way, in my sequencing, that is the way I do it on my sequence. I have the tree horizontal. There's some ancient history that goes back to S3 for why I did that. In any case, that allows you, you can still do your grouping, but it makes it much easier if you are doing, for example, a morph, and I want to come down here and I want to grab just the star. Let's try grabbing all of it this time. There we go. And I add this morph and we go play it. And now we've got 2 morph piling on top of each other, which should be kind of a little interesting, but it's the way it worked. Okay, so that's the first part of what you're going to do with custom groups. Now, and let me get out of that for a minute. We're going to do a little bit more than that. Yeah, we might as well save that. Why not? We're going to blow that away a few more times and so on. And by the way, thanks for the session ends clock time. That's very handy. Saved me looking at my watch, Don. Okay, we're going to come in here and now we're going to add the arches back into this group. And before we do, though, we're going to actually do one more thing. We're going to create another new group called arches. And you'll see why in a moment, why I'm going to do that. So we're going to take arch 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to make those a horizontal stack. And they should be left to right, and 1, 2, 3, 4 left to right. That's correct. And we're going to call that group arches. And we're going to save that. And then we're going to take this and we're going to add the group arches to that. Okay, now this is, remember, a custom stack. So where do we want to put these? Well, I think I'm going to put the arches down at the very bottom of the picture. And so I need to do a little math in my head, and we'll see whether I get this right, because the pixel tree, which is 12 strings, 16 strings, starts at down 4 rows. So we want to start this down about 12, let's say 21 rows. I may give me an extra gap more than I really needed, but it's fine. Okay, so we save that. We save it again. We go in here once again and create my, I think I may have clicked on a wrong pixel. There we go. No, I must have missed the check on one box. I wasn't paying attention. So there we have my 6 arches. Ooh, I probably didn't want that as a horizontal string. Maybe I did. I should have made that a vertical stack. Really what I intended. I did get my spacing correctly. So I've got a one pixel gap. And if I come down here and, you know, sure enough, there it is. There's my arches. And so we're going to exit that one more time, pick up the one that I apparently missed. And like that. Okay, so we go back in here to the group arches. Yep, sure enough, I missed the 1 pixel in the arch, and I am going to put them back in order. So 1, 2, hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that saves the group. And now if I go and look at here, we should have the group arches, which we correctly did. However, remember I said we probably don't want that in a horizontal stack. So we're going to go back into here and we're going to change this to a vertical stack. Vertical stack for arches is very commonly a nice thing to have. Now in a little bit, we're going to see how you use both. Because remember, I have both in my preview. So we come back over here and yet again, and now we have our 4 arches. They are arranged in a horizontal, or in a horizontal. I can talk a vertical stack. And if we do a morph across that, we're going to say okay there, and we're going to go to here. One of those commonly used things we do with, if I can get my cursor to go where I want, add that morph, and we're going to make it just like the others at one point during this little demo, and we say add it, and we go play it, and voila, we get that horizontal stack. Now you said, wait a minute, there was something else that flew across there, and that's because my vertical morph already had that included, and that was a leftover from when the star was in the wrong place. So I'm going to go delete that one, and we're going to take this and we're going to actually move it here. So we're going to move it down here so the two are not laying on top of each other. And now if we play it, we should get the vertical and then the arches doing their little thing together. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and exit that, and we're going to save that. And now we're going to start doing a little more games with what you can do with those custom groups. And again, I'm trying to keep this reasonably simple so we don't spend forever trying to do this. Trying to get it as I go in and out of Superstar and so on, by keeping the size of everything pretty small. Okay, here's where we're going to start having a little more fun. We are going to create. Actually, I need to create something else. We're going to create yet another group, and it will be the 4 arches. And this time it's going to be the 4 arches intentionally in a horizontal stack. So we're going to do that as horizontal stack. We're going to call it arches horizontal. And one of the other things that I do sometimes, I have it in this, is I name all of my groups group. So it'll be tree, star, and arches group. And the reason I do that is because in here, the groups come up in blue. When you go into sequencer, they don't show up separately. And so sometimes it makes it really obvious that if you've got a group for something and a prop for the same thing, the one is obviously the group. Okay, so now we're going to create we're going to do a little magic in here. We're going to add this one here as well. And this one was down 21, and we've got 4 of them, so I need to make this down about 26. Okay, and we're going to save that, and then we save it yet again. And this was, I mentioned earlier, one of those things you can do in Superstar now. And now you've got the arches here in a horizontal stack or a vertical stack, and then down here at the bottom you've got them as a horizontal stack. Now there are places where both are very useful. The big one where I use this arrangement for, and we're going to go to a morph, and we're going to say I want to morph from here to there, and we're going to do my same colors that I've been doing. Why not? Let's get a little variety, add it, and we're going to shove this out of the way. I'm actually, there we go, shoving it off the screen, but it's really there. So we're going to create another morph that goes across there, and we add that one. And now I'm going to get rid of this one so we don't have the conflicting data. And we play that one, and now it should sweep in from the center. And I'm going to do that real quickly. I'm going to slow that down again just so it looks a little bit better on Zoom. And there we go. Now, the other way of accomplishing that task would be to do that with VisFX. The problem with VisFX is getting it to accurately line up where you want it. And that's why I don't use it very often for splitting something in half. I could instead take this one, make it I'll bring this down so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to make it a visual effects, and we're going to take it from the outside edge, and we're going to try and split in the middle. Now, because I left a gap there, I may actually end up being pretty close. And then we'll do the same thing on this one. We're going to take it, make it a VisFX morph, and we go from the outside edge, and we go to the inside edge, should be about the same, and we modify that one. The problem is if you're very dense on your imaging, that can be a little hard to split exactly where you wanted it, and you may or may not get the timing right. Now, I came up really close on this. Not the timing, but the positioning exactly right. I actually have a cheater chart for the couple places where I do things like that tell me what numbers to put in here, up in this grid right in here, because it tells me exactly what to use. It makes it repeatable from one sequence to another, and that's actually why I do it. But being able to split this as a horizontal and a vertical works very well. Now, the other thing I'm going to show you is if I, for example, grab a scene and I go grab a bunch of pixels over here, you will notice it shows them over here as well. Click that off so it hides it. That works perfectly. The one thing that Brian does still need to work on is if you do a morph, some things don't quite work the way you might think they do on that. So if we come over here and do a morph, I'll take it out of VisFX and go click there. And you notice it didn't actually show up down here at the bottom like it would if I had done here to there or there. So one of those little details that Brian, if he feels inspired, needs to work on, but it works. It functions correctly, and it's really, really handy to have the separate arrangement. And I really am very happy that Brian did that, because I make use of it quite a bit. And secondly, I'm sure that hopefully somebody else is going to be able to make use of that. Okay, so now that we've played a bunch of games here, we're going to exit there. And I don't really need to save that. Okay, now I'm actually almost on time for my timeline here. How nice. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the things that I've done in my preview. This is one of my songs. It happens to be a little 11-second clip that says Merry Christmas. And we'll play it, just you can see it. It's the whole yard. Very unexciting. It runs every once in a while in the show. Okay, but we're going to go into here, and you will notice that I'm going to move the view window off of here for a moment. You notice I got a few more things over here on the grid. Now, I'm right now in my normal sequencing view, which is, I'm surprised I left it that way. Oh, I know why I did that. Okay, I haven't done something in this that I normally do. Anyway, I've got my almost all group, which is literally everything in Superstar. And then I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that won't get used. And actually, I have a different view that I normally use that hides that and only shows a couple of things. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to go to View Floating Windows. And what that does, and you can't see it because I moved it up onto one of my other monitors, but there's the whole yard as one item. And if I go play and then bring that back, you will see everything happening in Superstar. Now, one of the things that I do that makes things easier for me is remembering I'm sequencing everything in Superstar. And let me move this picture off the screen here so it's out of the way. It can get very cumbersome. You've only got 40 layers. And so Brian invented a bunch of years ago groups, and you can group a bunch of things together, and I do. I group everything except the pixel tree. And there's actually a little bit of a history of why I do it that way. So all these groups down here, and they all go onto a layer. So you got the star, you've got the eaves of roof line, and I standardize on that. Every single sequence puts all of these layers in exactly the same location. That's why there's a couple of gaps. I'm not using the arches, which would normally be layer 35, and I'm not using the planter, which is layer 39. Not only do I put those always in the same layer, if you expand one of these, for example, my semi-statics, very unexciting group, and we're going to expand that group. And down here at the bottom, you've got my pick down here, the 3 rows here at the bottom is my column lights. Right up above that is the perimeter string. And I happen to be doing this as an image file. And I have standards. Every single layer has a written standard as to where things go. And it allows some flexibility. For example, for this perimeter string, there's a 10-row layer, 10 layers it could go in. I put it here at the bottom so that it's nice and easy to see. I don't have to go scrolling around a whole lot. Every single sequence, layer 36 of the semi-static row is my left-hand column light. Absolutely every single one. I have this written down. It makes it consistent. I don't have to hunt around. I don't have to try and figure out where things are. Now, here's where this becomes where the big advantage, and we're going to get out of this group because it doesn't show much of anything, is we're going to look at the pixel star, and we're going to expand that group. And it has, again, it's an image file that did what it's doing, and it's just the same image every single time. Very unexciting, but I can take my timing for that and I can copy it to another group very, very easily. Whereas if I was doing this as a separate insert superstar effects, I would have to recreate that timing effect for every single element of the show. For example, this is on the ho 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 on the pixel tree, and I'm doing the same. Actually, I'm not doing that. Never mind. But in places where I'm doing the same thing. For example, I've got this. We'll look at this one, and there we have the candy canes. Now you may notice that looks an awful lot like the timing anyway for what was on the star. I just copied the whole thing. I changed to a different image where in the image portion here, so that it comes out right as opposed to where the star is, but it comes out it comes out in the correct location from a timing standpoint. Made it very, very easy to get effects to appear from a timing standpoint. You don't have to recreate each one. Now, one of the things I did do on most of these is because I'm spending a lot of my time down here, it scrolled down to 40 at the very bottom. I will do most of my sequencing down in the low numbers as well. That means I have to move props, move channels around a whole bunch on layers, but it works, and it saves me the time and effort of having to scroll up and down all the time. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here real quick is we go drag this over here. This is actually my spreadsheet, and you notice it says this layer, this is what it is. Ignore this column for a moment, and it's telling exactly what's there. So, for example, on layer 34, 35 is the outer ring, through 40 is the inner ring. And if I need more, for example, they'll be on higher layers as needed. The arches, I just said low is practical. And the reason I did that is sometimes what I'm doing on the arches may take 20 or 30 layers, but I try and put them low. On things where I have multiple props, like layer 36, I've got the eaves and the roof line. The eaves more often take weird things. So they've got 30 layers allocated, and the roof line has 10 layers. Same thing all the way down. Now, for my overnight sequence, I don't use the layers because it's a really simple thing. So it's just a really, really quickie there. This is my cheater chart that I talked about for VisFX as to where things will be. And that is, you've got, the arches doing a left to right or right to left. Here's the numbers that you're going to type into the box. For the star, left to lower left to right point, lower right to the left point, top to bottom, left to right, etc. And of course, if I need to go the opposite direction, like bottom to top, I just reverse the two groups of numbers. The fact that it is all standardized makes this so much easier when I start dealing and doing and sequencing. And it took me a large amount of work to get to this standard. And I've got 2 songs yet to do. No, 1. I'm down to 1 finally. But in the long run, it will make it much easier for me to be able to sequence it by having everything in the same place as much as possible. The only thing that is not in a group is the pixel tree. And I only ran into one sequence so far where I had something that 33 rows wasn't enough, 33 layers. And I created a little group for one particular effect to make that work. Normally, the pixel tree is right up here. The other advantage of why I did this is the way I was creating this from moving from S4 to S5. A lot of it was copying it from a second instance of Superstar. And the pixel tree has the most complex stuff, so I could just copy that, paste it, I'm done. Made it very easy to make that migration. The other thing I'm going to point out, and then we're going to go into some Q&A, is file name format. And I have talked about this on the forum a few times. If you look right up here at the top, it says, this is Merry Christmas 2021-0301A. What's the significance of that? Well, Merry Christmas is the name of the click. That's pretty obvious. The rest of the file name is the date and a revision letter as to when I saved it. So that was done. You may be able to figure that one out. March 1st of 2021, and it was the A revision of the day, or the first revision of the day. I do every time I save with the new file name. That way I can go back and go recreate what I did, or if I screw something up really badly, I can get it back without having to go through a whole lot of effort. No, I don't want to save that. The other thing, if you're not aware of it, one of those little tips in Sequencer, you notice there's a star in front of that because that sequence has changed. And it's a reminder that you've done some change and you should save it before you are completely done. Okay, now if I can accomplish what I'm trying to do. Okay, I think I can make this work. So we're going to stop sharing here, and we are going to screen share that one. And we go click. There we go. Hey, it worked. I'll even turn my video back on so you can see what my ugly mug. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'm looking at the chat right now.
Jim, while you're looking at that, for those of you who do have questions and you haven't dropped them in the chat already, you can do that. Or you can unmute yourself and ask a question, although I would ask that you allow Jim to get through the questions that have been asked first before you jump in on the mic. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, let me real quick go through the things that showed up in the chat. I was only sort of paying attention to that while I was talking. S5 doesn't show the individual prop motion effect. If you add a motion effect in a group with a prop, yes, it does if you've told it to create motion effects rows. I actually didn't, and there's, I often do not. I will manually create the ones that I want within the grid. Can you repeat the vertical benefit versus horizontal? Okay, and I'm going to use the arches as the example. If you create a vertical stack, it's going to create, when you go into Superstar, the effects stack one on top of each other vertically. Whereas if you do it as a horizontal stack, they're going to sit side by side. So when you were in that row where I had both the horizontal stack with the 4 arches, 200 pixel line horizontally, versus the 4 arches stacked 4 on top of each other. That's the difference between the horizontal stack and a vertical stack. And yeah, I can share that the spreadsheet, not much of a problem. How much of the display changes? In my case, very little. I don't change very much. I do create a new preview every year. In fact, I'm currently on if you look at this, I'm not screen sharing now. I'm actually on the 3rd revision of my 2021 preview. But it's all been very minor changes. I know there's going to be at least one more. It won't be a major one, but there is at least one more. And Don can probably answer the question on where the recording is going to be available. I think they're going to be on YouTube somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I'm typing up an answer to that one.
And I'll see here if I can figure out how to put the spreadsheet into the. What did I do? Did I kill my spreadsheet? I did. Okay, let's see if I can figure out how you put a file in. You click the button that says file. Oh, that was too difficult.
That's
so
we have a concept there, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah, isn't it? Actually, I did it once before, so now I just have to find the file. I know where it is. So fortunately, I'm pretty diligent about where I keep files. So spreadsheets. Of course, I got about 1 million of them. So if I come over here to okay, where did I put it? Oh, I'll bet you it's not where I normally put spreadsheets. It's over where I do some other stuff related to this. Well, I'll go find it. I know I've got it. Obviously I opened up Excel and found it, so it's in. Oh, that's why I couldn't find it. Okay, it was actually I was in the correct directory the first time. I just didn't see it because I didn't know quite what the name was. Okay, so we go back to what's that?
Isn't that always the case?
Oh yeah, I had it linked, and so I just went to it. I didn't have to know the name. Light-O-Rama Superstar Layout. There it is. Oh, okay, that's a very unexciting one. By the way, that column that I said ignore that column that had U and D and right and so on. What that actually was a conversion, because when I first went to S5, I followed the S5 concept of insert small groups into the Superstar. And so I had to redo a lot of things, and they all became the first layer or the first row on the grid. And when I went back to putting it all into one insert Superstar effects, I had to move a lot of things. And of course, they were all moving the same amount. So for a particular prop, so I actually put in the sheeter was how far to move it, so I didn't have to count squares every time. One of the other things that I didn't mention earlier, and I was going to, was why did I use 64 rows in the grid? And I know you didn't count, but the top row on the grid was 64 rows. And there's some history that goes back to S3 for that. Is that back in the original days, Superstar was limited to 64 rows or 64 columns and a total of 16K squares on the box. So I put all of my little minor props all the way up at the top to get them out of the way. So I probably wouldn't need to ever move them again. And I never did. When I moved into S5, I retained that positioning, even though that limitation is no longer there. You can do bigger. You're still limited, by the way, to the 16K blocks within Superstar, but you can go much higher or wider. But your total number of squares is limited to 16,384, whatever the heck, 16,500, whatever the heck, 16K is. Anyway, so I just kind of left it the way I'd done it before, and I laid the tree over originally horizontally, partially because of that limit, and I've done that ever since S3. And I laid it over so that the top was to the left, because that made it work right with purchase sequences. And originally I bought a number of my sequences from Brian, and so he, I think he told me one time, rotate left, don't rotate right, it'll work right, and it did. So that helped quite a bit. Well, okay, Joe, any other questions?
Any other questions? Because we are running up against the clock. We've got to switch presenters and hosts and YouTube streams and all that fun stuff. So while you are typing up any last questions you may have, and I'm sure Jim will stick around in the room for a couple minutes to answer them.
I will be here. Yeah, I will be here for a few minutes. I'm probably going to move over to another room for something else, but I may leave the laptop over on this one just so I can kind of pay attention. I see several thank yous over there, and
cool.
Somebody was a ham. All right,
there we go. So
very good.
Do want to thank everyone for joining us for this presentation, and thank you again to Boscoyo and Build a Light Show for their sponsorship. We are going to take a brief 3-ish minute break to switch presenters and hosts and YouTube streams and all that good stuff. You're welcome to stay here or switch to another Zoom room. If you do stay, please do not unmute yourself during this transition so that the host can easily communicate if we need to. Just a reminder that the closing session in the, well, you know what, that's from yesterday's script, so we're not going to read that part, but we will be back in a couple of moments with auto sequencing for traditional lights with Brian Bruderer. Stand by, everyone.
Okay, and one more thing, just FYI, my email is up there, or one of my emails anyway. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Also, I'm quite active on the Light-O-Rama forum, and it's K6CCC is my forum name. So you're welcome to ask me questions. As anyone who's followed the Light-O-Rama forum for long will know, I have been known to give some exceedingly long, detailed answers on forum questions.
Very long.